You can do whatever you want. In fact, it's harder not to. Everyone knows what they need to be happy. It's personalized. It's your own individual dream. And in my experience and in my opinion, it is your destiny. You're listening to the Science and Spirit of Happy podcast, where we discuss the rational, strategic, and psychological methods, but also the deep reasons and spiritual philosophy behind being happy down to the soul. Happiness isn't just hedonism. It's not even solely personal. Getting happy dramatically increases your effectiveness in every area, from business and finance to relationships. When we align with our own personal version of ideal, we end up not just happier, but healthier, more whole, more successful and richer, but even loving and loved. It's my opinion that getting happy for yourself is the absolute best way to serve the people in your life. I'm your host, Laura Bowers, master healer and academic researcher, and this is another episode diving into the science and spirit of happy, a logical path to soul. G'day, y'all. What it is that you want to live an ideal life, whatever you kind of dream about, the things that would make you feel fulfilled, it's actually your purpose. And getting there, and even starting to get there, will give your life more meaning than anything else. In many ways, no one can show you how to be happy. I mean, how many stories do you know of that you've heard of people leading other people astray with their advice, even if it's well-meaning, even if it's coming from a place of love, and even if it's coming from a place of experience in their own lives? How many times have you heard of somebody listening to a manager, a mentor, a parent on what they should do to live a fulfilling life that ended in them feeling anything but fulfilled? And that's because deep within all of us, we have a path that is unique to us. We have a guiding light that leads us to fulfilling, to completing, our own personal journey to gift the world our individual gifts. And every one of us really knows deep down exactly what that looks like. And that's why it's almost impossible for anybody to give you a blueprint on how to make your dreams come true. But there are many foundational and generalized, ubiquitous rules of thumbs that are at least proven to be aligned with your happy life. And they won't come as any surprise to you. Harvard did an 80-year study on these things. Many of them showed to be extraordinarily pertinent to anybody living a fulfilling life. They are exercising often, eating healthily, having close, loving relationships, a supportive community, meaningful work, and sleeping well. And for essentially anybody living a truly fulfilled, sustainable, happy life, they're almost unanimously doing these things effortlessly, just completely, almost naturally. So the million, if not billion or trillion or infinite dollar question is how? If you aren't doing these happiness habits, naturally, natively, how do you start doing them? So the reason many people feel that these happiness habits are effortless, while others struggle to the point of feeling like it's impractical for them to even try to do these things, is that the basic happiness principles are not prescriptive. They're symptomatic. That means if you aren't sleeping well, if you aren't eating healthily, if you aren't living an active lifestyle, if you aren't enjoying meaningful, fulfilling work and experiencing problematic relationships and situations that keep you up at night, these are all symptoms of a problem related to alignment that cannot be solved by treating the symptom itself. That's why many people feel that these improvements are impossible. And the others who do them natively don't understand how anybody could live any differently. And the data shows us for many of these happiness habits, changing them long term. If you're not one of the people doing them natively, if you're trying to change your habits towards being aligned with happiness habits long term, this happens to what scientists call outliers. They're the exception to the rule. I've even heard one scientist say that behind closed doors, people in his profession actually call it mythic to make these changes because the data shows us that the overwhelming majority of people just cannot do it. How discouraging is that? Well, on one hand, it is extraordinarily discouraging if you're trying to use, grit and discipline to kind of muscle your way through to create these habits. It can be very discouraging to you to understand that this way that we have been approaching trying to make personal development changes and grow towards happiness in our time, in our history, in our culture, whatever way you want to look at it, it is really discouraging to realize that just doesn't work. All the ways that we're told that we need to just do it just doesn't work. However, on the other hand, it can be very, very encouraging if you have thought that things should be a little bit easier. And if you think that there is something personally wrong with you, that you are not able to, change your habits towards being aligned with the ones that are aligned with happiness, I'm here to tell you that there is nothing wrong with you personally. But there is something wrong that we can address really easily. The only reason this has been almost impossible for people to really change their lives dramatically, aside from the outliers, is because of the primary focus that we have been paying to the symptoms instead of the underlying problem. Now, what happens when we try to muscle our way through with discipline, trying to change our lifestyle, trying to change our habits towards one that are aligned with, the goals and the dream life that we desire to live, and we fail and we fail and we fail? Most of us will end up having self-image that is really unproductive, that we just are not capable. And our self-esteem takes a real hit. But the real reason that someone struggles with these happiness habits isn't because they're lazy or lack, a sense of self-love that would result in self-care. Those are actually both just symptoms too. Now, take exercise, for example. I want to use exercise as an example because I have a lot of experience with this specific happiness habit, and I feel like it is the most straightforward out of the whole bunch. You can't really just get up and tell yourself to sleep better, but you can just get up and exercise, right? Technically, that is absolutely true. And yet so many people struggle to do this. And I know this this really, really well because I have been doing wellness mentoring for the past 6 years. I have been using my methods and my theory to get people to their health goals over and over again. And so I am very well versed in the things that are holding people back from, exercising more or eating healthily. But in the example of exercising more, the number one reasons that I hear that people cannot live an active lifestyle is that they don't have enough time or they don't have enough energy. And this sounds completely legit. How would you make more time in a day or create more energy in your body? And what I have experienced myself and what I have seen time and time again with my students is that what is really happening is actually more about the way that exercise feels to them more than anything else. It seems like there's no time. It seems like they don't have enough energy to do whatever activity. But in reality, there isn't enough time or energy to deal with the way the actual act of exercise makes a person who is struggling with an exercise habit feel. Now, to somebody who exercises on a regular basis, lives an active lifestyle, is probably in almost all cases doing this natively, that person can't imagine how you couldn't live actively. That person recognizes that an active lifestyle actually gives them more time, gives them more quality of time, and it actually creates more energy in their bodies. That simply is not true for a person who is not doing this natively. The culprit behind exercise being a drain on time and energy to some people is what I call microtrauma. Now, microtrauma is actually, I was quite surprised and not surprised at the same time. It is a term within the psychological lexicon. The way that I define it in my work seemed to be aligned with the way that they defined it as well. And the way that I explain it is that microtrauma can be even a nudge, any nudge that throws, this dream, this inner knowing, this light within you that kind of illuminates who, the highest version of you is, what, your ideal life would look like, what your purpose is. Any nudge that knocks that out of misalignment or blocks it off or makes it appear as if that is not realistic, etc. Any nudges like that you have endured from the external environment that you grew up in and have not healed, especially if this happened repeatedly, result in microtrauma. So when you're suffering from this microtrauma, first of all, it's extremely hard to see. It's extremely hard to pinpoint. And then even the most straightforward to-do on the happy list is anything but straightforward. These nudges make little divots and dents, what I call divots and dents, in your ability to see clearly and to act clearly and to feel clearly, which twists your life and your desires all up into something that is just not straightforward anymore. So happiness always does come down to spirit or life force or energy, whatever you want to call it. It's the lighthouse illuminating your potential. It's where all your courage, your confidence, and your self-esteem originate from. It's the home of your purpose. And it's the source of all meaning in life. And living in alignment with your spirit, with your life force, in energetic clarity. I mean, this is completely natural. I have a baby boy right now, and if you've ever known a baby, you will know that they are entirely aligned with exactly who they are, exactly what they need. And if we maintain that, if we are blessed with an environment that doesn't kind of muck up the straightforwardness of our spirit, of who we genuinely are, then we are naturally, just natively on the path towards what Aristotle calls the good life, or what Eastern philosophers call, enlightenment, or what psychology calls self-actualization or psychological well-being. And in that state, getting to your ultimate fulfillment, it seems like the most natural thing. And it is the most natural thing. But without the understanding of how to heal what diverts us, without the wisdom and the guidance to get ourselves on track with our own personal growth according to our own individual values, to give our own unique lives meaning, it can seem impossible. So I dedicated my life to figuring out exactly how to do this, how to make it so that the happiness habits, were no longer coping mechanisms, but a thing that naturally and natively happened in my life because I was healed, because I was living aligned with my purpose. And what I uncovered studying ancient Eastern and Western philosophies and energetic healing principles was backed up and actually present within all of this Western scientific material as well. And as I found this thread, I started pulling and pulling and pulling and finding more and more and more, to the point where I was able to put together a step-by-step strategy for how anybody, that no matter how far out of alignment they have become, can follow these steps to get back to being aligned with soul. And I am not the person who's grown up with a loving and supportive environment that nurtured my happiness. These kinds of people are great. These mentors, these influences, these thought leaders in our lives that have, had that experience in early childhood and beyond. I love these people and I follow many of them and I certainly study them. But how can they possibly relate to any of us who are not doing these things natively? How can they can be such an inspiration, and we can recognize in them things that are deep within ourselves that we wish to, come to the surface and to express themselves, to manifest, to live like them. But how, if somebody exercises every day without thinking and just thinks like, well, yeah, sometimes I have to, give myself a little nudge to get out there and hit the gym or the road, but I can't imagine living my life any other way. I would feel, terrible if I didn't do that. How can somebody like that really, really relate to somebody who gets anxiety attacks when they're exercising, who really feels like a pile of poop when they're getting into their bodies in that way? And what I've found is that, for the most part, they can. If I've found, going through therapy and whatnot, if you want a really good psychologist, really good psychologists are made of people who have had really big problems and have found their way through it. So if you have problems that align with theirs, then they can also guide you through that. So I want you to know that my research goes beyond my personal experience. I have kind of a talent and sort of an obsession, maybe it's more accurate, with figuring out kind of capital T truths that are ubiquitous amongst humans. I wanted something that was inarguable, that was not subjective, that was not, the way that I viewed things. Because I needed many things that were foundational, that I could rely on no matter what. So anytime that my kind of self-image that, I was not capable, or, damage to my self-worth, thinking that I was not worthy of, it was inarguable because it was human. And that's really a unique way that I can help. My parents suffer from mental illness. On one side of my family, my background is American Indian. We call them First Nations in Canada, but they were actually from the States. So American Indian, which comes with, the most horrific intergenerational trauma that you can imagine, the most dire things happening to women and people of color, that we know of. On the other side, we've got, long-term addiction, substance abuse, being totally absent during my childhood. And I suffered a lot. I mean, to the point where I don't even know if I would call myself a real person living a real life. I had, totally toxic non-relationships. I had such a lack of self-esteem that it was almost impossible for me to, create real relationships. I had such anxiety, and I mean relationships just in general, with people. I had a severe anxiety disorder where, I would have a panic attack if somebody talked to me in a lineup, because I wasn't sure what they wanted from me. I got into substance abuse because that was a way to kind of, the social lubricant of alcohol or drugs is often a way that people that are suffering from, micro traumas or major traumas, not being able to relate to other people, it can really help, or it seems to help anyways. The one thing that kind of saved me was this obsession with the feeling that I could do whatever I wanted to do. I worked so hard. I can't even tell you how many times on my journey I would think to myself that nobody else in the world would ever have done this, would have gone as deep, would have worked as hard, would have gone through the things that I went through. And luckily, all of the things that I went through, all the things that I studied, all of the experiences that I had, all of the experimentation that I did, the obsession, the dedicating my entire life to the pursuit of my personal healing and happiness resulted in the research, in the strategy, in the process that I'm going to share with you that totally changed my life. I am married to a wonderful person. He's not just a great guy, he's a wonderful person. I just had my first beautiful baby boy named Willem Gray. I have a stellar career that I love. I have made so many of my dreams come true. It is already uncanny, and I have just begun. However, the top of one mountain is always the bottom of the next. I don't know where that quote came from, but it seems like a keeper. In my research, I dive into the difference between interdependent and independent happiness. And they are truly, I believe, completely separate things, completely separate stages of life. And although I created great independent happiness after getting into a familial relationship with my husband, I embarked upon the path towards interdependent happiness, and let me tell you, my husband, of course, has a similar background to me, but he was so far in denial. He actually had no idea that anything bad had ever happened to him. So going through the ringer with him and his trauma and him treating me in the ways that he had been treated that are so aligned with the way that I had been treated in my youth was, I can't even say it was triggering, because it was so much more than triggering. It was so much more hurtful, having gone through all of this personal work to change myself. And I'm telling you, the amount of hours that I spent on this is unthinkable. I do not know another person in this world who would be able to do this work and then also bring it to the public. Like, people who do this kind of work, they work and that's all they do. But to have done all of that work to get into, what I thought was an incredibly healthy relationship with a person who is wonderful, who does have that wonderful spirit, that wonderful energy, that lovely, virtuous person, to then suffer so much through the same kinds of mistreatment, the same kinds of micro trauma, major trauma, whatever you want to call it. It threw me into mental health issues that I had never before even thought that I was capable of, like depression. It got so bad to the point where I did not want to be here anymore. However, very recently, we have come to the crux of these issues. We have come to the crux of, I would say, the rock bottom of this, mountain climb towards interdependent happiness. And something clicked in me just a while ago that completely popped me out of this gully that I just felt so stuck in. And I think that is synonymous with depression a lot of the times, feeling stuck in like a sticky, swampy swampland that you can't get out of. And recognizing that, I was unstuck, and knowing all of a sudden, it just completely became so clear to me, knowing that my research is nothing short of magic. It's nothing short of magic. I'm serious. I mean, my husband is no longer in denial. He has gone all the way from being completely a walking coping mechanism to being a present and loving and willing component of a healthy family unit, because, and I'm gonna toot my own horn right here, because it really is because of my research saved his life too. And I am recording this season to systematically bring you through my research in what I am doing to not even pick myself back up. We are not picking ourselves back up. I did not fall all the way back down to where I came from, but to climb the next mountain, which I think is, maybe the biggest one of my life, definitely the biggest one so far. So you get to not only hear, this groundbreaking, one of a kind, but totally intuitive and totally proven theory and strategy on how to make any of your dreams come true, you'll actually get to see this stuff working. Because I tell you, no matter what you're going through, no matter what you've been through, no matter where you're coming from, all you need is to be willing. All you need is to be willing. And, you follow these basic principles that I will outline for you. And happiness can be so much easier than living any other way. Now, denial, being unwilling, ruins every chance of getting better. So with this knowledge and wisdom that I'm going to share, it's only unwillingness can stand in the way. If you are willing, we can go anywhere. If you are willing just to hear, to listen, to me, to yourself, you can climb the mountain to the biggest dreams, the best life that you could possibly imagine. And I'm going to walk you through exactly what I'm doing to get to the top of this mountain in my first season, because I, like everybody else, have